Turbulence is normal. Turbulence, the few bumps here and there. But this was different. This was people crying, people screaming, the plane dropping feet. Like you could feel it. I could not feel my legs, and my hands were sweating, and I just was in this moment of pure fight or flight. What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of, the morning takeaway. And speaking of the quote-unquote morning takeaway, I have kind of had a revelation this past weekend and kind of some things and goals that I want to carry out within this podcast. And now that we're pretty much 50 episodes in, we've been doing it for a whole year, I really want to take this thing to the next level. And I think, and again, this has nothing to do with what this episode is about, but rather just a little update. And I think I'm going to do a little rebranding in the idea of my own podcast, because I have some pretty big hopes and dreams and goals for this podcast to take it more in the direction of having guests on the podcast and interacting with people to bring a conversation to the platforms, right? And taking it to Spotify, taking it everywhere, right? And really bring you some more insight from other people and other people's lives and perspectives. And I've talked about this before on this podcast, but just really acting on it. I think in the first idea that I've really had is I'm probably going to change the name of the podcast. And spoiler alert, I'll just go ahead and say it right now. I'm going to call it the Inside Influence podcast. So just Inside Influenced, 2 eyes. And the idea is going to be kind of not only just influencers, quote unquote, but people that have influence. And in my opinion, anybody has influence. And I think the idea of, well, one, if we do focus on a quote-unquote influencer, there's an idea that looking inside the days in the life of a quote-unquote influencer, or the perspectives, or the real problems that are present, not only within their lives, but everyone as a whole, and that are so relatable that sometimes don't get expressed on social media maybe. So I really want to bring a light to that, and I've got some plans and some guests already lined up, and it'll require some travel, but just a little update here for you on the podcast before we get into what I want to talk about today. And if you like that name, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you're the first one to see my videos. End of my YouTube sales pitch. So I want to talk about today, as I got home late last night from Detroit, and if you've been following this podcast a few months ago, I updated you on my grandfather, and I went to visit him again. And if you haven't heard the story, he's got a timeline, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Don't tell me you're sorry, it's part of life. I appreciate the condolences, but it's really and truly a cool story that he's got going on with everything, because his perspective is just so clear and peaceful and at grips with it all. So it's truly a beautiful thing. But I was there for this entire weekend and got back last night, and I had a connecting flight in Denver, and my flight from Denver to Long Beach, I have flown, I cannot count the amount of times I've flown in my life, and I have never experienced the kind of turbulence that we had on that flight. And turbulence is normal. Turbulence, the few bumps here and there, but this was different. This was people crying, people screaming, the plane dropping feet. Like you could feel it. I could not feel my legs, and my hands were sweating, and I just was in this moment of pure fight or flight, but also just like coming to grips with like, all right, I've legitimately never been in a position where I was like, thought I might not ever see the landing strip. And turbulence doesn't usually freak me out, but this one was different. And trust me, and I've had times where I've been in probably a smaller plane, like Delta has those smaller planes where we would drop and I was like, whoa, this is different. But this was a constant, like the first 30 minutes was just on and on and on, just constant. In the dark of night, you can't see anything. Like I said, people screaming, crying, just not good. And it hit me within the moment that I wanted to talk about that because it is so relatable to life. Turbulence in life it's expected. Almost like when you get on a plane to travel somewhere, it's expected that you'll probably have some turbulence. But what we truly lose sight of is what we do in the midst of the turbulence, right? When you expect it, right, it kind of comes second nature, right? It's like, oh, it's there again, right? But then what happens when something feels super serious in the grand scheme of things? It may not have been that serious on my flight, but in that time when everyone's crying, screaming, freaking out, the fight or flight is completely kicking in and the panic starts to kick in, it's what do we do in those moments? Because it feels as if there's nothing that is within our control. We just get on a plane blind, we check that pilot cockpit and we see all the buttons, the knobs, the lights, and we just walk right past it because we're like, wow, I'm sure glad they know how to do it because I don't, and we just trust them, right? And in this moment of crazy turbulence, whether it's in life, on a plane ride, or whatever the circumstance might be, you just kind of have to find something to put that trust in, right? And in those moments of no control, what is actually in our control? And I'm going to share what I wrote in my journal last night with you and then expand on it. But I was just kind of reflecting on it, and I said, flight from Denver to Long Beach was probably the scariest flight I've ever had. Drops involved in turbulence are no fun. With turbulence, you have to focus on only what you can control, because seemingly everything else is out of your control. What is in our control at all times is how we can choose to handle emotion, how we breathe, and the attention we take to the turbulence or whatever is at play in life. So, that said, I found myself in that exact moment, hands sweating, everything. I just closed my eyes and just started taking deep breaths. In through the nose, exhale out through the mouth, and just try to breathe, because you feel that heart rate spike, you feel everything start to go up, you feel the panic set in, and you have to figure out a way to bring that heart rate down. And I think that is so applicable to so many different things in our lives, whether it be an overwhelming amount of tasks that our boss gives us, or a stressful financial situation that feels like you'll never be able to get out of that hole, or maybe you're running a marathon or a 5K and you're on mile 2 of 3.1, you're like, there's no way I can get it. You have to find a way to come back to some kind of center and be mindful of the adversity that you're enduring, and just take one little step at a time to crawl back out, right? And I think that gets lost in our everyday lives and our everyday turbulence, and for lack of a better word. So I felt, in this moment, like when I was breathing and like, what can you control? And it's not only when your flight feels like it's about to crash, but whatever it might be whatever's happening for you, what can you, it comes down, and my biggest takeaway is, what can you control? And at the end of the day, whatever it is, you can always control your emotions. You can control, and by the way, on your emotions, whatever emotion you're experiencing is normal. There's no reason to try to feel that emotion or try not to feel that emotion and move right past it. That once you acknowledge it, you accept it, you say, okay, that's here, I'm feeling this, it's normal, and then you move on, right? It's not fair to ourselves to try to downplay it and push it aside, right? It's part of us, that's human nature, and we are supposed to feel these things. But when you talk about controlling your emotions, it also comes down to what is the attitude that we're going to take towards something. Your attitude is one thing that you get to wake up every single day and choose and pick. It is completely within your freedom and control. What attitude are you going to take to this day, right? And there's a great book. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl, he's a survivor of the Holocaust. And I think if there's one thing, he's enduring some of the most sufferable times in human history, and he just chose to accept that suffering, but his mindset never changed, and he chose an attitude towards each day and to hold on to some kind of hope, right? And I think that's applicable to everything in life, whatever the day is. Even if you've got a great day planned and you don't feel all that great when you wake up, well, you can trick your mind into saying, hey, I'm excited for today, I'm ready, let's do this thing, right? And I don't know, I think one of my baseball coaches told me a long time ago, when I was literally like 10 years old, he said, you only get one attitude, pick a good one. And I'm sure that might be a quote from somebody else, but that's something so applicable to these circumstances where we might feel turbulence in life. So again, what can we control? It's emotions, our attitudes. So I think they kind of probably goes hand in hand. And just the idea that controlling what you can control, and this isn't something you can control, but controlling what you can control is only going to lay the foundation and the roadmap for whatever is to come, if that makes any sense, right? When we focus on things that aren't within our control, we just induce worry and unnecessary stress to our brains, to our bodies, to our systems, our central nervous systems, that's not healthy, right? It creates these false stories and these false scenarios in our head that, again, we can trick our brains, and our brain starts to believe these stories, right? If you choose to believe that plane is going down, you choose to believe that you're crashing and this is the end, well, that panic and that heart rate is going to keep going up and up and up and up. And the same is true for all of the rest of little adversities and turbulence in life, that we have to find that mindfulness to come back to, and what stories can we tell ourselves to truly believe that there's a positive outcome, right? So I think that's a good way to wrap this thing up, and I appreciate you listening to me ramble on. Again, another reason why I would like to get into this Inside Influence podcast is the idea that it's not just me rambling on the whole time. I will still do solo episodes because I love these takeaways, and I'm truly, truly passionate about just talking about life, relating life metaphors and analogies, and because life's hard. We are going to struggle. I actually, this morning in my journal, one of the quotes I heard was, "The struggle is guaranteed, the success is not." So that's just another little side note, but I love these podcasts, and I appreciate you tuning in every week. Even if there's 100 views, that's 100 people that may be able to take one little piece of what I say, and 100 people that have the opportunity to comment that I can take something back from them. Because whoever you are, if you do comment on these posts and these videos, I do appreciate the feedback, and I do enjoy hearing perspectives. It's one of my favorite things that I look forward to after putting these podcasts out, is like hearing the conversations that are going to come back, right? So I'm going off on a little rabbit hole, but let's wrap this thing up as we usually do with a random question generator. If you could live in a book, TV show, or movie, what would it be? Well, movie, I kind of believe that we're living in the Matrix. But if I could live in, oh my gosh, one of these, what's something super cool? To To be completely honest with you, I don't really watch TV, don't really watch movies. I read books, but they're all like self-help and self-growth books. I don't know. I haven't even watched Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones might be a fun one. Just kind of go back in time. Probably not the best question for me, but we're gonna wrap this thing up right there. Either way, I appreciate you watching, listening, and whatever feedback you might want to bring in the comment section, I will look forward to getting back to you. And I will see you next time on Sunday. This will come out on a Thursday. I will see you on Sunday for a vlog. Yeah, Sunday. Every weekend, or Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Every week. 3 videos a week. I appreciate you. Have an awesome freaking day. And don't forget to smile.